Welcome in, guys, to One Piece chapter 1094. And wow, what a chapter. Needless to say, we have a lot to talk about. So with that being said, my name is Sai, and let's just get straight to it. Unfortunately, I'm a creature of habit and I like to go through these chapters chronologically, so please bear with me until the end. So this chapter picks up where we left off last time. We have Atlas giving the order to the Pacifista to turn against the Marines. And woo, I kind of feel bad for the Marines here because they're severely outclassed. The minute the Pacifista turn against them, they start destroying all the Marine fodder by their side. The one silver lining they do find is that since this order came down from Vegapunk, that means that Vegapunk is now down on the Fabrio phase, and he is now a lot easier to take down. But Vegapunk though? He doesn't care. He wants to find Bonnie as quick as possible. And I gotta say, I really admire that aspect of Vegapunk. So while the boys in the Vegatank 8 are making their way downstairs, Frankie's like, hey Vegapunk, how is this Vegatank 8 actually being able to ride these clouds, and how are we not falling to our deaths? And believe it or not, but Vegapunk unveils another crazy piece of technology, saying, hey, these wheels on the Vegatank are made out of clouds, the same clouds that we are traveling down, and these clouds just so happen to have the property that makes them stick together. You might be wondering, Sai, why are we talking about clouds here? That's the least interesting thing out of this whole chapter, but let me tell you, the devil is in the details, and you never know when these clouds might just come back into play somehow. I mean, Frankie, he's the shipwright and inventor of the entire crew. Him learning this piece of information is pretty huge, and not to mention, he is the one who asked Vegapunk this question in the first place. And let's not forget the newest addition to the crew, Zeus. And Zeus loves to eat Nami's black thunderballs. So who's to say he doesn't just start munching on these clouds and get some kind of crazy upgrade down the way? So cloud talk aside, while they're searching for Bonnie, before they even hit the ground floor, Sanji pulls off another crazy observation hockey feat, and he notices where Bonnie is and he starts zip-zapping to her. And I just gotta say, I really like how Oda is portraying the monster trio in this arc. We got Luffy at Gear 5th, we have Zoro versus Lucci with the King of Hell aura on his blades, and now we have Sanji with his Lady Dar stronger than ever. The one character I really do hope gets some love in this arc is Jinbei though, because he's on cargo duty. We even see Jinbei in this chapter and he's kind of just off on the side chilling. So hopefully something comes Jinbei's way and he gets a nice moment to shine as well. So now we cut over to Bonnie, who is still being chased by Marines, and there's actually a Vice Admiral that spots her from behind the rubble. He comes in with his giant seashell on a stick and tries to do her in. Bonnie thankfully dodges the attack and she whips out a brand new weapon. In her hands lies a kid's water gun. Honestly, the first time around, I thought this was a real gun, but if you look closely at the Marines she shoots, you actually see the splash effect, and you can even see that it's some sort of liquid on their head, so it's definitely some sort of water gun. But it's not just any water gun, we can't underplay it that much. It is the water gun of near-death experiences, because the people who get shot by this gun experience what it's like to almost die. And honestly, I have no clue how this ability works. There's two real options with this. One, we could go with the timeline theory and say that, oh, since Bonnie can manipulate timelines, since we saw her do a distorted future on herself, maybe this water gun is able to have people go to a different universe for a split second where they already died, and then they can just feel the pain or shock of it. Or maybe this water actually ages them up really far to where they would be dead for a split second. Honestly, pick your poison. We have no real clue until we actually know what her devil fruit really is, and Oda still has not revealed that devil fruit name yet. Thanks to Bonnie's mysterious ability though, we got a really fascinating line, a line that piqued my interest. So one of the Marines who got shot is laying on the ground grabbing his head, and he says that I just saw the Sanzu River, or if you're reading TCB, he says the river Styx, but they're pretty much the same thing. The reason this line had me rubbing my chin for a minute is because the Sanzu River in Japanese mythology is actually a river filled with demon or yokai. And not just that, but like the river Styx though, this river leads straight to hell. And you know, it just so happens to fit perfectly with what we see later in this chapter. But before we get there though, we see Bonnie and she's trying to run away from the Marines who are now distracted by that near-death experience, and she sees her dad, or at least a clone of her dad, and she's running towards safety because she thinks that the Pacifista are on our side. But that doesn't happen because this Pacifista is actually being controlled by Bluegrass. Vice Admiral Bluegrass has the ability to control whoever or whatever, I'm assuming, she rides. And I just gotta say, as a guy who lives in Oklahoma and is surrounded by bluegrass music, this ability hits home. So if you guys don't know, bluegrass is a type of banjo and or country music, and typically when you think of bluegrass and country, you think of people riding horses, riding bulls, and etc. And I just feel like this ability is super cool because Oda even put in the small detail of putting a little rope handle on the Pacifista that Bluegrass is controlling. I think it's a pretty cool ability, and I am wondering if there are any limitations to this ability, because if she could just hop on a Seraphim, for example, that would be pretty broken. And who knows, maybe she can even ride Luffy and the boys, and she could control them. Obviously, I don't think that would actually happen, because their haki is just so much stronger than hers, if I were to guess. But another small cool detail about her ability is that she can actually make the Pacifista talk. So if I were to compare Bluegrass's ability to any other ability we've seen thus far, it kind of reminds me of Tama's ability and how she controls animals with their Kibidongo, but of course to a lesser extent. So moving on though, Bonnie, who is now confronted by Bluegrass and the Pacifista, can't move a muscle, because obviously she just saw her father's entire backstory, so the feelings are hitting her pretty hard right here. Thankfully though, Sanji swoops in and saves the day yet again. Also, another thing I really liked about this segment is that Sanji is the one who saved her and not anybody else, since this is the reason why Sanji wanted to come down here in the first place. And not to mention, Bonnie, a couple chapters ago, did hype up Sanji as a really cool guy, a strong fighter, and a great chef. So in a way, I feel like this is the payoff to that dialogue. Before Sanji can get Bonnie back into the Vegapunk 8 though, we have the unnamed Vice Admiral coming in with his seashell yet again, and he has a named attack this time called Sea Otter Hammer, or Whack an Otter if you're reading TCB. And I just gotta say, I love the small details that Oda put into this guy's attack, because I don't know if you guys know this, but sea otters actually love clams and seashells, and whenever they find one, they grab it with both of their hands. It's really cute. They grab it with both of their hands, and then they try to slap it into the ground until it breaks open. So having this Vice Admiral have a seashell clam weapon, I don't know what to call it, and having him name his attack after sea otters, it just makes a lot of sense. Oda, the master of small details, is at it again. So past that part, we cut over to Kizaru, who is still being kept at bay by Gear 5th Luffy. And if you look closely at the panel, you can actually see that Kizaru is using his laser beams to deflect Luffy's punches. Another thing we can see is that both fighters here are getting pretty dang tired, because you can see both of them are huffing and puffing. Kizaru says, hey, I can't keep wasting my time here, I gotta complete my mission. Luffy, on the other hand, says, well, my mission is to stall you, so I'm doing my mission quite well. Kizaru, before Luffy can even finish his sentence, starts zip-zapping away back over to kill Vegapunk. That is when we have all of the key players, the strongest people on the island, all noticing something a little bit strange. They sense, as Jinbei calls it, a strange presence, an ominous aura. Someone has just landed on Egghead Island. I really like the lineup and order that Oda decided to give us here in regards to who sensed the ominous presence first. First person we have is Kizaru, then Luffy, then Zoro, then Lucci, and lastly Jinbei, and then the Vice Admirals. And also, squeezed in between there, we have Usopp, Nami, and Chopper, who are attending to Stussy, who is critically injured still. And one thing I want to point out is that Robin is still nowhere in this chapter. We haven't seen Robin in, I think, 2-3 chapters, actually. So it really does make me wonder where she's at. Personally, I still do not believe that Robin is in trouble with how crazy Luffy, Zoro, Jinbei, Sanji's Lady Radar, with how crazy their observation haki is. I feel like if Robin was in trouble, somebody would have taken notice of it well in advance. I really like that Oda squeezed Usopp into this lineup, because Usopp does have pretty decent observation haki. So Usopp sensing Saturn's presence just makes a lot of sense. At first, I didn't think Usopp actually sensed the presence, but when you really think about his placement, and if you look closely at him, you can even see like these stress bubbles right on top of his head. And not to mention, he is the one who tells Chopper and Nami that they have to hurry up. And now, coming in at last place in terms of observation haki and or portrayal, we have Vice Admiral Dahl and whoever this guy is. The reason I point this Vice Admiral out is because if you look closely at what he's holding, it looks like he's holding a magical girl wand, which is weird, because a couple chapters ago, he was the one Vice Admiral that was actually holding a sword. So I'm just like, dang, brother, where'd the sword go? Is it on the other end of the wand? Or did he drop the sword? Or maybe this is the sword? I have no clue. But with how Oda has been portraying the Vice Admirals in this chapter, I wouldn't be surprised if he has some really strange ability. And now, going on, we get one of the most absurd things I've ever seen in One Piece. We have a straight demonic magic circle popping up in the middle of Egghead Island. This circle starts spawning black lightning. It starts spawning hellfire around it. You could even see that buildings are catching on fire from this circle. It is insane. Going down a couple panels, we get a really good shot of what this circle looks like from the top side down. And boy, oh boy, we're gonna read into this one. There's a couple of things that immediately jump out at me. First is the number 5, because who wouldn't recognize the number 5 here? People are taking this number 5, myself included, and saying that maybe this is a representation of how strong this Gorosei member is in particular. So the 5 would mean that he is the 5th strongest out of the Gorosei, the weakest Gorosei, mind you. And honestly, I could see that. I mean, why not send the weakest Gorosei to go to Egghead Island? I mean, if somebody's gonna do it, it's gotta be the guy who's at the bottom of the totem pole. Another way to look at the number 5 is to think of the planet he's based on, planet Saturn. So right here, we have a beautiful layout of our world's solar system. And if you look closely at it, and if you only count the Gorosei planets, you'll notice that planet Saturn is the 5th planet closest to the sun, which again could be pretty telling of where he stands on the Gorosei totem pole. And now on the opposite end, going to the planet that is closest to the sun, we have Mercury, and we have a Saint Mercury, or I guess his name is Saint Wadkuri, who is the god warrior of justice. And you know, that title is somewhat befitting of the strongest fighter of the Gorosei. And right behind him, we have Ethan Beron v Nasujuro, who is the Gandhi-looking samurai, coming in at number 2. Number 3, we have Marcus Mars. Number 4, Jupiter. And then, of course, lastly, we have good old Saint Saturn at number 5. Another cool detail about this magical symbol is that it has a star in the middle. Of course, you could say it's a pentagram. It could be a symbol for Baphomet, which is obviously a demon. But another way to look at this is that it could actually just be a star, because the Gorosei, translated literally, are the Elder Stars. So it makes sense that that is his logo. And on top of that, we got one more thing to point out with this circle, and that is that it has the hoof of the celestial dragon to top it all off. Or at least I'm assuming it does, because there is a lot of smoke and fire that's covering the bottom. But if you look at the symbol we have the 3 up top, and then the only other point we do see is at the very bottom opposite of those. So it very much, to me at least, looks like the hoof of the celestial dragon. Saint Saturn is repping the boys right now. And with this, I got one question. Speaking of the boys, do you guys think the God Knights have a transformation like this as well? So now, going on to Saint Saturn's design, because, oh man, we have a lot. We have a lot here. We got spider legs like Black Maria. We have a black flame cloud, just like Awakened Rob Lucci and Awakened Luffy. And we even have bull horns to top it all off. What the heck is going on here? And the craziest part is that Oda didn't give us his specialty narrator box or title card that tells us what ability this is. It doesn't say Zoan Devil Fruit, blah blah blah. We have to play with our imaginations here. And thankfully, for the first time in One Piece history, the community has come together and said that this looks like Ushi Oni, a Japanese yokai, which is part ox and part spider. Obviously, Oda took a lot of artistic liberties, but I do see the resemblance. I feel like it is pretty on point. And not to mention, if you look at the crazy claws that this yokai has, it actually matches the sharp claw-like fingernails that the Gorosei member has here. And not just that, but if you actually look more into Ushi Oni lore, apparently the Ushi Oni has an ability where if somebody were to look at him for too long, their souls would get sucked out of their body and die, just like that poor Marine who just so happened to look at Saint Saturn. Coincidence? I think not. I feel like this is Ushi Oni, or at least Oda's play on Ushi Oni. So, if you look up Ushi Oni lore, you'll come across a really interesting fact about him. You'll learn that Ushi Oni typically is very friendly to one other yokai, and that yokai is Nure Onna, the wet woman. And you might say, Sai, what does this have to do with the Gorosei? Well, a lot of theorists have been saying that Imu is actually a play on Nure Onna. What made people come up with this theory? The main thing is that, one, people are kind of on the boat that Imu could be a woman, so we were looking towards mythological yokai women, and that kind of fits the bill. But another thing about Nure Onna is that since she is the wet woman, and since there has been a lot of talk about Mother Nature and how Mother Nature is the sea and hates devil fruits, people are saying, well, the wet woman has water. Maybe this is Imu. Another reason, I think the most damning reason as to why people think Nure Onna is related to Imu is because of the name. So, a couple chapters ago, we actually got Imu's full name from 900 years ago. We learned their name was Imu Neurona. Neurona, Nureona, it kind of fits. I feel like that could be the case here, if we are going down this yokai road of abilities. Going off a little bit more on that train of thought, because if we are saying that Imu is this play on Mother Nature, the sea itself, and they hate devil fruits, is this transformation that we get from Saint Saturn a devil fruit, or is this a genuine transformation? I held a poll last night during the live stream, and 52% of people said that this is a devil fruit, but 48% are convinced that this is not a devil fruit. And personally, I lean with the 48%, but I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this. Do you think this is a genuine transformation, or no? Do you think this is just a mythical Zoan devil fruit? So now, moving on past Saint Saturn's crazy transformation, we got two dialogue boxes from Bonnie and Sanji. Bonnie says, hey, what is that transformation? What is that thing? Which is a small detail, but that also means that Kuma, in Kuma's memories, doesn't even know what this is. The next dialogue box we have is Sanji, who was actually able to sense Kizaru's laser beam before it even gets to them, because it says, hey guys, look out! Thanks to Sanji calling out the bullet spray, the Vega Tank 8 is just barely able to dodge Kizaru's laser, but they do go off-road in the process. Which is why, by the end of the chapter, they all land and crash right in front of Saint Saturn. One of the worst places to actually fall. Again, that is some pretty crazy RNG. Kizaru, after noticing that he missed the first bullet, tries to go in for another hit, but that is when Luffy uses his Gear 5th muscle form to stop Kizaru, and it's a pretty crazy attack. So, Kizaru tries to shoot Luffy. Luffy ends up spinning in circles, so he kind of avoids the Kizaru laser beam. And this is when Luffy whips out a brand new attack. He whips out Gomu Gomu no White Star Gun. And for the first time since Luffy and Kizaru started fighting, we see the black lightning coming out of Luffy's punch. Confirmed conquers Haki right here. Personally, if somebody hit me on the side of the head that hard, I think I would be dead on the spot. Kizaru, while taking this hit, says, wow, this isn't good, and then he ends up crashing into a couple of buildings, and that is the last we see of Kizaru this chapter. Luffy, even though he did land the winning blow, isn't looking too good either, because as we all suspected, Luffy has reached his Gear 5th limit for now, which isn't a brand new thing. We saw this during his fight with Lucci, where right after that fight, Luffy turned into an old man. We saw this during the fight with Kaido, where halfway in, Luffy turned into an old man, and then he had to restart his heart to fight again. So yeah, Luffy in Gear 5th has stamina issues. And of course, just like Gear 2nd and 3rd and 4th, eventually he will get over this issue, but since this is a brand new transformation, he hasn't mastered it quite yet, and it is really taxing on the body. So while Kizaru and Luffy both fall to the ground, Saint Saturn looks up and he says, "Nika." And it's pretty cool, man. I really want to see what Saint Saturn's relationship to Nika actually is. So now that Luffy is presumably fading out of his Gear 5th form, I'm really wondering what's going to happen with that ancient robot. Because we were led to believe that the drums of liberation, Sun God Nika's heartbeat, is what is powering that robot up. Now that Luffy is fading away, will that robot still have some juice in the tank to fight Saint Saturn and do something, or will it power down momentarily? Who knows, because that is another big mystery that is yet to be shown. But also, Luffy is still in Gear 5th by the time we end this chapter, so we don't really know if he's going to turn into base form or if he's going to keep up the Gear 5th and just lay on the ground for a little bit. There's a lot of mysteries about Luffy's powers still that we do not know of yet thoroughly, so anything is possible here. So now, we have the final page. Sanji, Frankie, Bonnie, Vegapunk, Atlas. They're all in the presence of Saint Saturn. And I gotta say, I'm really impressed by Atlas and Vegapunk, because they can both stare this monster down and their heads do not implode immediately. Vegapunk being Vice Admiral level confirmed. Or at least in terms of intelligence, of course. But yeah, pretty cool double page, pretty cool interaction in matchup. And by the end of this, before Sanji and Frankie can even get a word in, Bonnie steps up to the plate. She starts remembering Kuma's flashback. And we hear the Gorosei telling Vegapunk to eliminate Kuma's consciousness, to turn him fully into a pacifista. Before this chapter, we could have always just said that, hey, maybe the reason Kuma lost his consciousness is because he was just stronger that way. Maybe that's just how pacifistas are. But it turns out that making Kuma lose his individuality was what the Gorosei wanted at the end of the day. So it's like, maybe he knew something. Maybe Kuma had some spicy dirt on the Void Sentry or the Gorosei that they couldn't just let out there. And speaking of Kuma, I'm really hoping he shows up next chapter, or at least in the near future. Because last we saw, he was blasting off like Team Rocket. He's not Admiral Kizaru anymore either, so if he were to go somewhere, I feel like he might be coming here to Egghead. I think that would just be the perfect fit. And plus, if we're doing the Sabaody parallels, I mean, Kizaru's here, Sentomaru's here, the Straw Hats, Bonnie are here. Kuma's really the only person missing. And you know who else is missing? The Blackbeard Pirates. I don't know where they are. We don't know who is off the coast. If we're going by process of elimination, of course it's Lafitte and Devon, because they were the only two Blackbeard Pirates who we haven't seen recently. So they could show up and swoop in and get the victory, or maybe even try to steal Saint Saturn's abilities, which I don't think that would work out too well. And also, one more person that I always have to mention every week, but Caribou is still on this island somewhere. So yeah, at some point in time, Caribou's gonna come in, and he's gonna come in clutch. So now, on to the comments from the previous video. The first one we have says, Saturn, unwillingly making heads explode, explains why the Gorosei never leave Marie Joie. Oda is cooking an Egghead. This is without a doubt becoming my favorite arc. Yes, I agree. In terms of events, I gotta agree. Egghead Island already is one of my favorite arcs out of One Piece. But now, Saint Saturn, heads exploding. It's crazy, right? But what's interesting about this is that there was actually a Marine on a megaphone announcing this ability, saying, hey, if you are Rear Admiral or below, don't look at this man. The reason I find this interesting is that this means that people outside of the Gorosei and Admiral Kizaru know about Saint Saturn's power, or maybe they were debriefed this day. Either way, kind of crazy. But another thing to take in mind is that before Saint Saturn made his appearance in this chapter, the only people who actually talked to Saint Saturn were Admiral Kizaru and Vice Admiral Doberman. So it almost feels like Oda was teasing this head exploding ability only working on Rear Admiral and below well beforehand. Like, it just makes so much sense why Saint Saturn was gobbling down on that glizzy in a cabin and not above on the deck with Kizaru. But of course, he was trying to keep his presence unknown, so there's also that. The next comment says, I believe Jinbei will face the Blackbeard pirates. The monster trio all have fights going on or about to happen, but for some reason, Jinbei ain't fighting no one at this moment. I hope so. I really hope Jinbei gets a good fight. And hey, if Lafitte and Devon come up to the Labo phase,
Jinbei
is our best fighter up there. I mean, of course, Zoro's there, but he's fighting Lucci. Robin is MIA. And hey, wait, maybe Robin is in danger. Maybe Lafitte and Devon are here to kidnap her. And that is when Chadman Jinbei comes in and stops them, pulling a 2v2. And you know, I gotta say it right here, but I think that's a pretty good matchup. I think Jinbei and Robin would clear the house. But yeah, even if it isn't the Blackbeard Pirates, I just really hope Jinbei gets off cargo duty. Give my man something important to do, please. Like at least Chopper, Nami, and Usopp are guarding Stussy and trying to nurse her back to health. Jinbei is just off the coast chilling. I mean, please put my man in water. Get him in the field, coach. The next comment says, it's interesting that Sanji is in this lineup because of the Germa 66 connection. He goes on and says, I feel like they will talk a lot about science, technology, and stuff in this fight. I really hope so. I mean, we're in the land of science. Vegapunk almost every chapter has whipped out a brand new invention. And now here we are, ground floor. We have Vegapunk, we have Atlas, we have Frankie, who, you know, Vegapunk protege right there, and we have Sanji, who has a body made out of Mad's team science. So I wouldn't be surprised if Vegapunk is able to give Sanji a boost, give Frankie a boost, and I also wouldn't mind if Saint Saturn whipped out some knowledge as well. I mean, dang, this guy is the god warrior of scientific defense. I want to see if that title is just for show or if he has some meat behind that muscle. And now the next comment is somebody predicting what all 5 of the Gorosei are going to be if they are all based on yokai. Of course, we have no idea if they are all going to be based on yokai, but we're going off that assumption. And he says Ushi Oni for Ox Demon, Anenra, Smoke and Darkness, Baku for Nightmare Devourer, Gagoz, I really hope I'm pronouncing all these correctly, the Demon Ghost, Mujina, the Shape-Shifting Badger. Those are the 5 yokai that I think the Gorosei are. And the last one is the only swordsman. I really love that Luis took into consideration that Gandhi is a swordsman, so he made the final one a swordsman as well. Kudos to you, man. Good job. I haven't really looked too deep into yokai just yet, but hopefully I'll make a video and hopefully I'll bring these up to some extent. And now the last comment says, Monkey D. Dragon might pull up during chapter 1100 to help the crew escape. And the Gorosei, being this hyped up, makes it even crazier that Sabo escaped a room with 6 of these guys chasing him. Yeah, I have no idea, with this knowledge now, how Sabo got out of that room. I mean, those guys must have just woken up from a nap, maybe they were a little bit tipsy, but you're telling me 6 people transformed into things like this, with Saturn maybe being the weakest one, have Sabo escape? Absolutely blasphemous. But hey, it's not like Sabo got away unscathed, because he did get hit with Imu's tail shadow thingy. But yeah, with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me on today's video. I really freaking appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed everything we had to talk about today, and if you had your own opinions or thoughts, please drop them down below. I would love to hear them. And if you haven't yet, please be sure to subscribe, like, and comment. That would really mean the world to me. And shout outs to the channel members and patron members here on the side. You guys are the freaking best. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Sai, signing out.